morning. Welcome back to the second hour of Lovebabz Love Talk on Babs Rolls Ivy. I'm delighted I get to talk to, is it Ina or Ina?
Ina, good morning, Babs. It's such a
Good
pleasure.
morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
I am delighted to talk to you this morning. I was reading your bio over the weekend. You are quite impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're going to be here performing at the Schwartzman Center in the on the Underground on the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you are a Ukrainian-born pianist.
Yes.
And now, do you live here in the United States now?
I live in Los Angeles, yes, where
Okay.
the weather is beautiful.
Are you in Connecticut right now?
Oh, no, but I heard all about it.
Hey, you've been on the East Coast, I'm
Yes,
sure.
I lived for a long time in New York. I love snow actually, and I love weather. I'm very much looking forward to being with you guys, and it's a great change.
Oh
I'm
my
actually flying in
gosh.
from, I'll be flying in from Florida. I'm playing a concerto there in Sarasota. So it's an interesting packing experience when you pack for 80 degrees and then for 20 degrees in one trip.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, come prepared because it's cold.
Yes,
And there might be a little more snow on the ground when you get here.
that's great. I love snow angels.
So tell me about your background. What now? My heart and sympathies are with the Ukrainian people. Let me start there,
Thank you.
because I believe in people fighting for the right for them to be their democratic selves, and that the world is watching, and that there are allies who are rooting for the Ukrainian people.
Yes, well, I'm from Odessa and I haven't been back since I left as a child. But Odessa really has taken a lot of hard hits in the past few weeks, even. So thank you for saying that.
My pleasure and my honor. So, were you a child that when did you know you were musically inclined? Did your parents like just said, "Listen, we're gonna put you in these lessons and you're gonna go and you're gonna do it," and then you fell in love, or did you fall in love and they were like, "Well, this child is promising. Let's extend this or put her in school or something."
Well, it's a bit of both, but you have to remember, Babs, in the Soviet Union, basically everybody or almost everybody plays the piano, and but the discipline with which that is approached is a completely different ball game from. So the style of parenting is different. So I'm not saying that my parents were mean; they were wonderful, but it was just expected that you're going to do this and you're going to do it well. But I happened to have an immediate talent for it, and I was something of a child prodigy. I had written an opera at age 9. I was a performer as a child and a composer. And so I never, for one second, thought that I would ever do anything else. So, as you said, it's a bit of both.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So you knew you love, like, when did you know that you absolutely loved this and that this will be my calling?
Probably the first few years, I think that just when I realized that this is something where my imagination kind of runs wild when I compose, and even when I um, find different ways to make sound at the piano. But at the same time, this rigorous discipline, it's not easy for a kid, but it also gives you a sense of structure and a real sense of accomplishment. So, and in fact, so I'm coming into um, Schwartzman Center at Yale to do a recital that's a book reading and a recital. So the first
Hmm.
few early chapters of the book talk exactly about that, about what you just asked me, about what it's like to suddenly, realize that you're a musician, but very early on in these early days. And what does that mean? And of course, all that with a backdrop of Odessa of the late 80s and early 90s.
So is your book memoir in its tone?
It's a memoir, but it's also, I think, a fun, adventurous read for people who don't necessarily know music. It's about, there's a big love story. That's the big arch of the book. Um, the book talks about, what it's like growing up in the Soviet Union, what it's like to be an immigrant, what the process of being an immigrant is, what, being a refugee is, what being Jewish is in a place that is highly, highly anti-Semitic, which uh, the Soviet Union was back then, and also what it means to grow up in the States, in sort of a difficult position of being an immigrant at a time when nobody really knows or cares or wants to kind of support you in that way. So we were supported by HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, when we moved here, and but. of course, there was a lot of misadventure in my early school years in the States. And so there are many funny stories and not so funny stories related to that. And there are also adventures of travel, of touring. So once I became a concertizing pianist, just kind of the fun, the humor, the ridiculous situations and the amazing situations that one finds themselves in, the travel and the people you meet. So all of that is in the book. And of course, Ukraine is in the book. So it's about many, many things.
Hmm. So, do you feel like where do you feel like you belong in the world? Because you have a lot. There's a lot going on to unpack. Where you live, where you come from, being Jewish, being an immigrant, being from the Soviet Union. I mean, there's a lot in there, and I would imagine it takes some doing and some undoing to call someplace home.
Well, that's a beautiful question. And actually, there's a chapter in the book that it describes kind of a midnight tour through Moscow with an old friend and ends at a cemetery. And the end of the chapter is, and there, as the sun was coming up, I suddenly felt myself at home, even though, of course, I'm not at home there at all. I guess the idea is that as an artist, as a musician, as somebody who shares music, and as someone who really loves people and connecting to them, I'm at home wherever I share music. But having said that, of course, I have two kids and a wonderful husband, and I'm professor of piano at UCLA. So Los Angeles is my home right
Hmm.
now. But I do feel at home anywhere and everywhere I make music because that way of connecting to people, I think, is the very essence of the art of music. And it's the essence of my life and what makes me happy,
Hmm.
if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
So are your parents still alive?
My father is. The book is dedicated to my mom, who died 3 years ago from brain cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Sorry to hear
But
that.
that was a quite a that's quite a special story and journey as well. And so that kind of circles the book too.
Hmm. Hmm. So does your father share? Is your father a musician as well?
Nope. In fact, he likes to laugh that he was the only Jewish kid in Odessa who was not a musical prodigy. No, he doesn't play any instrument, but he likes music. He loves music. He doesn't really have much of a choice, I guess, having it around him
And
always.
does he live in LA with you or in the US somewhere?
My dad lives in Chicago, in the Chicago area.
Oh my
There's,
gosh, it's cold in
it's
Chicago.
cold I grew up in Chicago. It's very cold in Chicago. I love Chicago though. I love going there to play. I have great friends there. And my dad is actually, he's going to be in Los Angeles with the kids while I am with you guys.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he's here with us now in Los Angeles
So
for a little bit.
I'm fascinated by your story, because I mean we are, as you can see and know, the United States is in a movement, in a moment,
Right.
both with immigrants and politics and policy and all kinds of things. And I'm always I have a great many friends who are immigrants, and they were sounding the alarm for a very long time about this coming and about the way things are being framed. And I'm always curious about the uneasiness of what that means, particularly people whose relatives came through uh, uh, the Holocaust, whose parents have come through um, communism and all that other kind of stuff. I'm always interested in when they notice or the similarities of what was to what is.
Well, that's a complex topic, of course. But it is my hope that this country, no matter what, it's my firm belief that this country, its democracy will survive.
Mm,
And of course, I believe that every single human being who has come here is an immigrant, who is trying to make a life here, has a right to do that. And, it's I'm very proud. I'm very proud to be an immigrant, and of course, this country is founded on founded by, I think, refugees and immigrants, and we're all in some ways immigrants. So we need to remember that.
I think you're right. So tell me about the kind of music that you like to play.
Well, so this particular program that you will hear in Schwartzman Center is extremely varied, and it's a great example of how I like to put programs together and the kind of music I like to play because it has some of everything. And by that, I mean it has music that's very familiar, like it'll have Bach and Chopin Liszt and the Great Polonaise Fantasy by Chopin, which is very romantic and lyrical and gorgeous. La Campanella, which is flashy and virtuoso, but also some pieces that were written specifically for me that are different, that possibly nobody has heard. Or maybe if people know my album, Manuscripts Don't Burn, some of these pieces are on that album. And there are two wonderful women composers on this program, and one is actually a Yale master's student in composition, but I met her when she was 17 or 18 years old. Her name's Maya Miro Johnson. And so a piece by her is called Manuscripts Don't Burn, which is the title of the album and the title of this program. And that's a wild avant-garde piece. It's really crazy. I do all sorts of things. I scratch the piano strings. I read poetry in Russian under my breath while playing the piano. It's stuff like that. And then Veronica Krausas, who's a Los Angeles composer, and she wrote a piece for me called The Master and Margarita Suite, and that happens to be my favorite book. And actually, the phrase manuscripts don't burn comes from that book. And so that's a really kind of very different piece. It's a very stylish, very kind of contained Baroque dance suite. So short pieces, very elegant, but written very, very recently. So in other words, I love playing new music. I love premiering music. I love collaborating with composers living today. And but I also love, as I say, the meat and potatoes of our repertoire. There's Beethoven on the program too, and Beethoven is very, very important to me and very close to my heart.
So when you're thinking about the kind of music that you put together for a repertoire, what do you think about? Like, what do you gear it toward? Um, if an organization or a concert house invites you and they're celebrating something, or I mean, do they call you specifically for a particular kind of music? How do you decide what you bring to a show?
That's another really great question, and it's not it's not an easy and immediate answer, I guess, because it's always different. So, for example, for concerto performance, and in fact, I was in Schwartzman Center. I was playing with the symphony in October, and we did the Clara Schumann concerto, and that was a specific request. Um, and of course, I was more than happy. It was the New Haven Symphony with Perry So, your wonderful, wonderful conductor.
Oh yeah, he is
He's
magnificent.
delightful, and I had such a great time, and I very much hope we work together again. But that was the concerto that was requested, and I've been asked to play it quite a bit recently, and it's a beautiful piece. So, for example, for concerti, often it's more specific because it fits into a larger program that the orchestra has in mind, or even an entire season that's thematic. When it's a solo program, often one might offer a presenter a couple different programs. One might be a little bit more traditional, geared towards the familiar. One might be adventurous, and one might be more maybe interdisciplinary minded. I have programs with poetry, for example, that I love to do that involve spoken word. And so this program is very unusual because, in a way, it kind of grows out of my music words programs where I bring in poetry. But this is my book. This is the book that came out a year ago and that I'm so proud of. So I thought, how can I make a program where I read a little bit from the book and relate pieces of music to it in a very seamless manner? And so this one works. And I think it's not something that's done a lot. So
I
it's
I never
unusual.
heard of it done this way, so it's intriguing just on that alone.
I think it's entertaining also because I think for people to hear both reading and, it's I choose the fun parts to read. I think it's all fun, but I choose parts to read that I think work in a space like the Schwartzman Center. And of course, the way they go into the music, I think keeps an audience engaged and interested. And in the end, that's the most important thing is how to stay engaged with an audience. So the idea of just coming on a stage and playing a Beethoven sonata and some Chopin and then taking kind of a distant bow and leaving, I don't think that works so well anymore. I don't think it's doing us musicians a great service because it puts us at a distance and we're trying to get rid of the distance. We're trying to connect as much and as immediately as possible. So whatever we can do to make an audience feel like they're part of the experience is, how I think about programming, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
I like that you talk about connection because everybody in the arts world is talking about connection, and I think it came out of us coming out of the pandemic, and we started to understand that art and artist was necessary for our survival because we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't be anywhere, so we were all logging in to artists, trying to connect to artists and hearing music. I mean, Yo-Yo Ma did music every day at around noon. I mean, so now that we're coming back into spaces and into community again, people really want what you just said, some connection to the artist, not just to the art, but to the artist, and a little more bridging the audience performer gap, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And it's very important. Yes, during COVID, I had a thing called Corona Fridays where I would every Friday I would do a live stream on social media. And then later on, I realized it's better if I record it and then stream it because the quality of the recording will be better. And I also got my kids involved and we had Pajama Fridays where all three of us wore pajamas and we read a little poetry. It was fun and it had a real following. And that's still up. Like I think a bunch of episodes are still up on my website, except for the ones that Facebook decides to mute, which happens occasionally. Um, but that was amazing. I've always believed in this connection, even before COVID. I mean, the series I mentioned, Music Words, which I had in New York for about a decade, that brought together poetry read by poets, so their own poetry with music and that format, play, read, and no explanation, just like an emotional arch. I did that for about a decade, I think, before COVID. So I also have a kind of a monologue recital, a theatrical thing that I do, and my book came out of that. And that's called Polonaise Fantasy, the Story of a Pianist. So I talk about growing up in Odessa and immigrating and making a life here and what that's like. And I interrupt the story with music. It's a slightly different format than what I'm doing at the Schwartzman Center, because at the Schwartzman Center, I'm reading from my book. But I guess why am I telling you this? Because this kind of style of communication, really opening up to the audience, was always something that I was deeply interested in. And it always seemed to me like, they want to hear more. They want to know who the artist is making the music, not just the music itself. Although fundamentally, great music does speak for itself, and that's our goal as musicians, is to make it speak.
Mm. So tell me about your teaching life, because I mean, teaching at the higher institutions, how do you balance touring, teaching, family, work, all of that?
It's hard. I sleep very little. No, but one has to be organized. But in fact, I think teaching is a big part of a performer's life, in that, especially pianists, we're very much kind of in our own heads, in our own spaces, and our own souls, because we work alone a lot of the time. And I love chamber music. I love playing with others. But a lot of the time, you do the work in front of the piano and you're alone. So to share that work, your experience, by verbalizing it to other people and to help them and mentor them is a joy. And I think it's a big part of it. It's a big part of growing yourself as an artist. I learn a lot from my students, and they're always inspiring to me. I have about 12 or 13 students. They're all wonderful pianists, and it's really like a family. So I think it's just the other half, like the yin yang of making music today, is you
So
have to,
how
yeah.
grueling is your touring schedule? And do you sort of pick and I mean I'm sure you could pick and choose where you go and what you want to do, but how do you how do you gauge that? Like how do you decide, okay, school is out, I'm gonna tour for 3 months or whatever.
Well, see, I don't, I wouldn't leave for 3 months. It's not, I guess, like the pop singers or rock singers who kind of take off for 2, 3 months, or even opera singers who have to, when they do an opera, they go to another city and they have to be there for a month to rehearse and do the opera. The life of a soloist is a little bit different because if I go to do a concerto, that's a couple days rehearsing and performing. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 performances, or and then usually not more than 2 rehearsals. That's about half a week to a week. Solo recitals, sometimes I'll go for a week or two. Sometimes when it's break, I will go for longer. But also, sometimes I try to take my kids when I can, and we're able to get away like that. So it's a balance. I don't go away for 3 months.
Hmm. Now,
Um,
are your children musicians too? I bet you they are.
my son plays violin and my daughter plays piano, but they do lots
Okay.
of different things, and there's no pressure from me. They'll do what they want. And they've gotten used to the fact that I go away to perform and that I'm happy when I do that. So they get it, they understand, but of course they're a little sad. Before COVID, I went to China every year and toured for weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they would get sad then because they were little. But
Oh,
now I think they're cool with it.
yeah. Okay, so how old are they?
10 and 13.
All right, so that means they're listening to other music other than the music that you play. So
Oh yeah.
what do you like? Like, are you listening to Beyonce and Taylor Swift? Are you listening to, who are you listening to?
So my daughter loves Taylor Swift. She used to. Now she likes Sabrina Carpenter a lot.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm open to everything. I like a lot of different music. I love jazz. And but I think whatever music is out there, I try to get to know it. I'm not, I don't dismiss anything,
That's interesting.
especially if my kids like it, I want to understand it.
You want to understand it.
Mhm.
And so do they bring you music? Do they say like, "Mom, you gotta listen to this song," or you hear them listening to music and do you engage them like, "Okay, why do you like that song? Like what is
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of both.
I,
It
I
can be a
like
little bit of
that.
both. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. All right, so you got this concert coming up on the 15th, and are you accompanied by anybody else, or is it just you?
It's just me.
Okay. And so how long is the concert going to be? You there for 2 hours, an hour and a half?
So there are 2 sets. So one concert's at 4 and the other one's at 7:30. Oh, that's my daughter. Oh, she can smile.
Hi, daughter.
That's her name's Frida. Um, the concert's at 4 o'clock, and then the other one is at 7:30, and it's about, I would say, an hour and 20 minutes,
Hmm. Hmm.
each set, and no intermission. So I hope people enjoy it, but it's because of this play read format that I think it goes by very quickly.
And so, have you already picked out your outfit? Like, because every
I
time I go to the
haven't, Babs.
symphony, I see these women come out in these gorgeous gowns and jewels, and I'm thinking, how are they packing all this stuff?
Well, I haven't because it's a seasonal nightmare. What am I going to do? First, I'm going to Sarasota, and well, so obviously I have to pack 3 different outfits. But for this program, I like to wear something a little bit more kind of cabaret style-ish.
Oh,
So I don't want to do a big gown because it should feel somewhat informal. So like I wore a big gown when I played with the orchestra in October, in the big hall, which is stunning, by the way, and
I
so
think I
gorgeous.
saw you. I think I was at that concert.
Oh yeah, that was a fun
Yeah.
concert. And but for this, because it's a slightly more intimate feel and venue, I think I'll do something else, but I haven't decided what. So you're gonna have to come and check it out.
Oh, I have to come and check it out. But is wardrobe a big part of all that you do? Because the, I imagine, every time I go to the symphony and somebody is playing and they show up, they always look fantastic, like just glamorous. And I thought, wow, how do you keep that up?
It's important, and but it's also it's fun. It has to be kind of part of it. I always think, well, what mood is this piece? And what do I have that kind of fits the mood? And yeah, it's about, I think it's important. I definitely think how you present yourself on stage is, you know, a part of the show.
hmm Now, do you get a chance to go to concerts yourself? Like, are there people that you like, I absolutely must see, or you go see every time they're around or in town or where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's so hard to even find time to practice, with my lifestyle. And that's a big part of what we do as performers, like the discipline of practice. So sometimes I'll sit things out, even if I really, really want to go, just because I need to practice. But absolutely, I go to concerts and, for example, I love Mahler. So there's a Mahler symphony being done at LA Phil. I'm not going to miss it. I love string quartets. I love big kind of dark symphonic music, and there's soloists, of course, that I'll go hear, both piano and strings, etc. I love opera, so that's important. Every time I'm in the East Coast, if I'm in New York, I try not to miss the Met. I really miss that. Going to the Met was one of my favorite things to do in New York City.
Wow, I like that. I like that. And do you have opportunity to compose and write your own stuff?
I used to compose quite a lot as a kid, and then the playing the piano itself took over in a way, but I hope to get back to it. I'm doing that little by little. I found some old pieces that I wrote as a kid, and I'm sort of editing them to make them into something.
That sounds good. Well, I am delighted that you're coming to the Schwartzman Center on the 15th. Two sets, 4 o'clock and the 7:30. And this is right on the heels of Valentine's Day. So people will
Yes.
still be feeling all in love, right?
Oh,
So
good.
so this would be a wonderful opportunity for people to sort of come and be in an intimate space. I don't know. Have you been in the space yet? No.
I have.
Yes.
I checked it out last time. It's really fantastic. It's perfect for this program, and it's very romantic.
It is
It's
a
got a
very
fireplace going and
intimate
everything.
space. Yes. So that'll be wonderful, and people could get comfortable and hear you perform and be one with you with this music. I'm looking forward to it, and
Thank
it's
you so
perfect
much.
right after Valentine's Day.
Yes, my Valentine's Day will be spent in the air, and hopefully I'll land just fine. Hopefully the
Oh,
snowstorm will be done by then.
oh, hopefully. But I think that we're gonna be fine because I think we're getting snow in the next couple of days, but Valentine's Day is supposed to be pretty warm, like, high 30s. So and then it's the craziest thing, the craziest
That's
weather.
not pretty warm for me.
Oh
I'm
no,
used to
no, that's
freezing.
not that's not LA or Sarasota weather. But for us, 30 something higher than freezing is balmy.
That's funny. I look forward to it, I look forward to the contrast. I like adventure.
Well, I'm glad. Now, while you're here, are you just for the show, or do you get to interact with the Yale School of Music students or students in general? We have opportunity to impart some wisdom.
Oh, I wish not this time. This is an awfully short trip, but hopefully next time.
Okay. Well, I so appreciate you taking this amount of time to talk with me about your artistry, your work, your writing, and your musicality. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real joy. And
It was
stay
my
warm.
pleasure. And enjoy. Tell your daughter enjoy Taylor Swift, Swifty.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Babs.
All
Thanks
righty,
for
I'll see
having
you
me.
soon.
See you soon.
Yes. All right, Harry. I think we're gonna call it a day. And I'll be back tomorrow. So everybody have a good afternoon. Be safe out there. Still icky. So be safe.